Controversial yet brave statement. I have never liked the foam posits. Maybe because my foot is kind of big. Like I wear a 10 in women and an 8 in men. Those shoes just look like damn boats on me. I literally got off work and just started to film this video so that I can make sure I get it out by tomorrow to stay on my posting schedule. So I don't want to hear shit about my lashes being crooked, okay? It's been a long day. I live a stressful life. Look, bear with me and my lashes. I know. Usually I discuss luxury fashion and whatnot, but today I thought it would be cool if we talked about my first two loves, which are sneakers and TV and movies. Obviously, we're going to talk about Martin and Will on Fresh Prince, but there's actually a couple of iconic sneaker moments on this list that are some hard hitters. So let's jump right in. Let's start with the movies and then move on to Will and Martin because they really had that shit on every episode. And it was kind of hard for me to narrow their list down. So I had to make a list. Then I had to rattle off some honorable mentions. It was just a lot. So let's jump right in with the movies. Number one is the Nike Cortezes and Forrest Gump. I know you've seen Forrest Gump. And if you haven't, you've definitely heard the phrase run, Forrest, run, or life is like a box of chocolates. So in the scene where he was running, he has on some red and white Nike Cortezes that Jenny gifted him. Jenny is a devil witch of a woman who she's really the villain of the whole movie, but I digress. So he goes on to run across country in these shoes, and then afterwards he just gets tired and goes home. But the iconic part was how those Cortezes ended up being everywhere for a little bit. Next up are the Jordan Space Jams from Space Jam. Space Jam is a dumbass movie. So I'm trying to think of the best way to describe what Space Jam is about. Space Jam is about Michael Jordan, who is Michael Jordan in the movie, basically. And he goes to a cartoon land. He gets some cartoon ops. They play a big game at the end. And if they don't win, then they got to stay in the cartoon land. It's a shit show. It's a fever dream, okay? But in the movie, he wears the Jordan 11s. They became popular. It was a huge thing. They've been re-released a couple of times. And then also another honorable mention, Bill Murray wears the 2s in the end scene where they play against the cartoons. Let's just focus on the shoes here. The 11s and the 2s were made popular or highlighted in Space Jam, and they were a super huge iconic moment in movie history. Next up are the Nike Air Mags that were highlighted in Back to the Future. The Nike Air Mags were designed originally by Tinker Hatfield, who is a major designer, iconic designer for the Nike shoe line. He designed the 3s, the Jordan 3s through the 15s, and then he also designed the 20s and the 23s. So he has designed all of your favorite Jordans. But at any rate, Marty McFly puts them on when he goes to the future with Doc, and he goes to the year 2015. And eventually, the self-fastening laces and the light-up panels became a reality when they were released in real life in like 2011, and then they were re-released again in 2016. And you've seen these shoes on a couple of artists. Kid Cudi has them. I know Yachty has them. I want to say Fabulous has them also. Those shoes are going for upwards of like 30K right now, child. So it's serious business out here. Iconic sneakers bringing in the big bucks as usual. The last sneakers that I want to highlight on the movie side are the Onitsuga Tiger Tachi Lees that are highlighted in Kill Bill. The Tiger Tachi Lees were used in the film as an ode to one of Tarantino's favorite movie, Game of Death. It's a movie that came out in like 78, and it stars Bruce Lee, where he wears the Mexico 66s. I believe that's what they're called, but they're the same shoe brand, and it's pretty much the same shoe. Now, I know you didn't see these damn shoes. Like, even if you haven't seen Kill Bill, you've definitely seen a poster or something where she has on the yellow bodysuit and those shoes, and she has blood all over her because she ends up killing Lucy Liu in the oh, was that I don't know if that was a spoiler. All right, you've seen that movie. Like, come on, I'm not gonna play these games. Like, I would say that they're a cult classic. I mean, it's a cult classic, but it's really not a cult classic, bro. Like, cult classics are usually indie. You done seen Kill Bill, and you done seen these damn shoes. You know what I'm talking about. What's crazy is while I was shooting this video, I got a delivery, and I think it's some sneakers in this box. So let's do a live unboxing. Yippee! Just never mind that. Some New Balances. The fact that I don't know, I really never know what's in these boxes, and because I shop so much. But yeah. Okay, I lied. I said that was the last movie, but this is really the last set of movies. And Spike Lee really deserves his own separate video just talking about the fashion and everything that's shown in his movies. But for right now, we're going to focus on three. We're going to focus on He Got Game, She's Gotta Have It, and of course, Do the Right Thing. One of the most memorable scenes in the movie in Do the Right Thing is when somebody steps on bugging out cement white fours and he gets pissed off, and it's a whole scene surrounding it. I read somewhere that it's supposed to be like a take on gentrification in the neighborhood because the person who steps on his shoes is a white man. So anyway, Spike Lee always, it's the art, the artiste. Anyway. So another pair of shoes that were highlighted in the movie are the Nike trainer medicine balls, and Radio Raheem wore those shoes in the movie. And He Got Game, Denzel wears the 13s, and he buys them when he gets out of jail so that he can convince his son to go to a certain college. But if he doesn't go to the college, then Denzel got to go back to jail. You know, when you explain what a movie is about, sometimes you be like, all right, for real, bro, it's not as dumb as it sounds. Space Jam is actually as dumb as it sounds, but He Got Game is actually a good movie. So the 13s are highlighted. Also, Ray Allen wears the Foamposite pearls in the movie, and then he wears another shoe, the Nike Zoom Hawk Flights, and the pearl Foamposites and the Nike Zoom Hawk Flights that he wears in the movie were actually released by Nike in 2015, I think, in a pack called the Class of '97 pack. Remember when Nike and Jordan used to like release those packs? Those were the times. I feel so damn old now. Now you got to get on goddamn the sneakers app and you can't even buy them. We used to be a proper country. In She's Gotta Have It, Spike Lee plays the character of Mars Blackman, who has been touted as like one of the first sneakerheads ever by a lot of people. But he wears, in his opening scene, the Jordan 1s. Now, in that movie, a lot of questionable things happen, but we're not here to talk about the plot. Okay, let's just focus on the shoe. Those shoes and just the fact that he was a sneakerhead in the movie, it landed him that campaign ad that he did with Jordan, it's gotta be the shoes.
Honey, it's gotta be the shoes. Shoes. You sure it's not the shoes?
I'm sure, Mars.
And when he asked Jordan, like, why did you choose me to be in this ad with you? He thought Jordan was going to say he was a fan of his movies. And Michael was like, no, actually, I just like that you wear my shoes, bro. It really ain't that big of a deal. Eventually, Spike ended up getting his own Jordans, the Spizikes. And when his son got his own shoes, they weren't called the son of Spikes. They were called the son of Mars. This video concept was originally introduced by a close friend of mine, but it made sense when they brought it up because before I ever had any money to buy anything, designer, or even owned anything that would probably cost over $100, I wore a lot of sneakers. When you don't have a lot of money to spend on clothes, you can buy a pair of shoes in any price range. Like, I didn't always have J's and I didn't always have Forces, but your girl had a million pair of Vans, okay? I had a million Vans, I had a million Chucks. It was how I stayed fly on a budget. I think the first time I ever got my mom to spend over $100 on a pair of shoes, they were a pair of Juicy Couture slip-ons that had like, they were pink, of course, and then they had a map all over them, and they said Juicy on one shoe and Couture on the other shoe. I still own those shoes to this day. They are dirty and ran over, and they're in a pail or a bin at the bottom of the bin, at the bottom of my closet somewhere. But I will never get rid of those shoes. Now, as I got older, of course, I started doing the most and spending hundreds of dollars on tennis shoes. But I will never forget my roots. I still wear my dirty Chucks that I've been having forever. I still wear Vans every day. One of my favorite pair of shoes are some Vans that have flames on the side. I've been having them since 2009. Like, I don't have a middle section. Okay, I'm either extremely dressed up and I look like wealth, I look like money, or I look like I need to borrow a couple of dollars up off you. Okay, there's literally no middle ground. Finally, it's time to break out the big guns. I got them. Let's try them and rate them 1 through 10. No. So we're going to talk about Martin and Will Smith in The Fresh Prince. There were so many shoes or memorable shoe moments in 90s TV shows that this list and this video could have been so damn long. Like, Marlon had a good ass shoe collection in the Wayans brothers. And coincidentally enough, Eddie had a decent shoe collection in Family Matters, even though that show was lame as hell. And the list for Martin and Will are so long that I'm going to have to read off the list because I don't want to, I'm going to leave something out, I'm sure, but there were just so many shoes. So let's get started. Everybody remembers the episode of Martin where he takes off his shoes in Nipsey's bar and gives them to the unfortunate boy. And it's a Christmas episode where he gets visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. But the shoes that he gives the boy are his taxis. And then he wore the steel gray 10s multiple times in season 3. I only know that because the 10s are my favorite Jordans, so I had to highlight those. He wears the Concords in the Romeo and Juliet episode where he turns Romeo and Juliet into a hip opera. No, Beyonce. If you don't get that joke, then we're not vibing like I thought we were. Okay? So in the episode where Pam is hypnotized and she starts acting like Martin anytime she hears a bell, he has on the up tempos. And then he wears the twos, the white and red and black twos in the episode where he thinks Gina is trying to kill him. Now, I have a list of honorable mentions. And for that list, I have to read them from my nifty note card because I don't want to forget them. They're like lesser known shoes that aren't like really that iconic or memorable to a lot of people, but a lot of people wore them at the time. So he wore the Nike Ballistic Forces, the Nike Ballistic Force Highs. He wore the white and black 7s. He wore the 92 Airfly Huaraches. He wore the 93 Air Reaper Dirties. He wore Chucks several times. He wore the 93 Diamond Turfs. He wore the 92 Mutombo Adidas. He wore the 94 Air Max Sweeps that were formerly worn by Pete Sampras. And then he also wore the 95 Nike Air Tenacities. So I'm sure there are several other shoes that Martin wore throughout that series that I didn't highlight, but those are some of my favorite episodes and those are some of my favorite shoes. So those are the ones that I wanted to talk about or that I remember personally. And it's my list. It's my opinion. If you have memorable sneakers from Martin, then leave them below or something. In my opinion, Will had the better shoe collection out of between him and Martin. Now, both of them had some fire ass like fictional shoe collections, but Will really had a lot of fire. And actually he used to get the shoes from Nike before they even released because he was already the Fresh Prince. He was already a successful rapper. So they just sent him the shoes so that he could wear them on TV, basically. The shoes that are probably the most synonymous with Fresh Prince are the Grape 5s. I think they're in the theme song of the show. And then also they were used a lot in the ads about the show or anytime like they were interviews and stuff, they used the picture of him in the Grape 5s. He wore the red, white, and black 9s. He wore them casually. And then he also wore them on the episode of Jazz's wedding. One thing I do like about both shows, but Fresh Prince more so, he re-wore the shoes. So it was more believable. Like he wore a lot of shoes more than once. Like he wore the Hair 7 so many damn times. It wasn't even a point to try to figure out what episodes he wore them shoes on. He wore the Nike Solo Flights on the episode where him and Carlton were blackmailing Hillary into doing their chores so they wouldn't snitch on her about dropping out of college. He wore in the second to last episode of the show, he wore the hot red Air Max 95s. And then he also wore the infrared sixes in the season 3 finale. So my man's pulled out that shit all the time, and yeah, Will really had a decent like shoe collection. Now for Will, I definitely had to have a note card so that I could remember or so that I could list some shoes that I remembered that he wore, but they weren't like that important. And so they were just shoes that was clean, but nobody would probably remember them. So he wore the white, black, and green 94 Air Max, Air Trainer Maxes. He wore the Nike Quantum Forces, like pretty much the whole first season. He wore the Air Max 180s. He wore the Nike Air Flight Lights. He wore Timberlands a lot. He wore the Nike Air 180 Pump Highs. Those shoes really pissed Reebok off because they're kind of a ripoff of the Reebok Pump shoes that were still a popular shoe. So obviously Nike was gonna be like, oh yeah, hold my beer. Anyway, he wore the Nike CB34s, which are Charles Barkley shoes. He wore shell toes. He wore the metallic Jordan 5s, and then he wore the Columbias, the Jordan 11s. Now, again, this was a hard list to narrow down. And between Martin and Fresh Prince, I noticed that season 3 is when they really start pulling their pieces out. But that's what a lot of shows. I think like when you do a sitcom, they have a decent budget and the show starts to pick up traction. But if you get to season 3, that's when that budget really opened up and you really get that wardrobe. Now, what I really need to make is a video about Ghost and Power clothes, because on Ghost, Michael Rainey Jr. and Braden be really having that shit on. I want to know what the budget is for that fucking show, for real. So again, this is different from the designer luxury pieces, but I am a streetwear girl. That's what I am to my core. That's really where my heart lies. And the amount of TV and movies that I watch should really be illegal. So I felt like I should combine them both and combine my love of sneakers and my love of TV and movies and make this video. I thought it was cool. It was cool for me to be able to readily recall some of the stuff that they wore, and then also have to kind of sift through pictures to remember what they wore. Like, what's funny is with the He Got Game thing, I remembered the 13s, obviously. And then I remembered the phone posits, but I didn't remember the pearl phone posits that Ray Allen had on. I remember the royal phone posits that a random man playing basketball had on in the background. So I don't know. I just love shoes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for coming back. It was something different, but diversity. I mean, dimensions. You never know where I'm going to go with this. I've been broke. Not that I'm rich now, but again, like I said earlier, if you think about it, you can find a sneaker at any price point. And that's one thing I always want to drive home. You do not have to have a lot of money to be fly, pretty much. And sneakers is like the number one example of that. So thanks for joining me. Subscribe again. Subscribe to my video or subscribe to my channel. Have a good one.